Good afternoon, Miss. Well, today we are talking about a summarize to the bilingual brain, specifically in egocentrism and the perspectives of the others. Um, Focusing in cognitive adaptations, perspective taking, and structural neuroplasticity. Um, Perspective of the others. The challenge of perspective is when giving or receiving directions, the communication is difficult because individuals struggle to adopt the listener's perspective, offer suffering from egocentric bias. Um, This bias is the tendency to assume that others share the same knowledge and visual perspective in any given situations. Um, the perspective grid task is an experiment by Catherine Kinsler and Boaz Kaiser. They used a grid game where the directors ask a naive participant for odd objects. Some objects were hidden from the director's views, and this requiring the participant to shift perspective to the correctly identify which object the director was actually referring to. In this slide, I described the example. Some grid objects are hiding from the director's point of view. Selecting the correct target requires the participant to suppress their personal viewpoint. Each participant must actively evaluate the context from the perspective of their partners. And the bilingual childhood advantage, a striking spatial difference, monolingual children's age to in 4 to 5 age fail the perspective task roughly 50% of the time, choosing objects from their own view. Conversely, children raised in a bilingual setting fail only about 20% of the time. Crucially, these benefits occur regardless of active language production. Ambient multilanguage exposures insufficient to build this cognitive adaptability. The theory of mind and empathy. The theory of mind in bilingualism is linked to early development of the theory mind, the understanding that others have independent intentions, desires, and knowledge. Early development mastery, bilingual children displays accelerated capacity to pass theory of mind milestones, separating personal knowledge from other realities. The false belief test is an experiment measuring if children can predict a character search for a displaced chocolate bar. Approximately 60% of bilingual 4 years old pass successfully, compared to only 25% of monolinguals. Bilingual versus monolingual brains. Brain plasticity and learning. Learning stores declarative informations, facts, vocabulary, and procedural information, example, automate action, syntax, by creating new connections between neurons. Functional similarities and overexertions. Neuroimaging reveals that the structural layout for processing a first language is highly similar between bilinguals and monolinguals, particularly during speech comprehensions. However, speech production tasks like pictures, naming, require greater activation intensity in file left frontal and temporal brain areas for bilinguals. This indicates a necessary overexertion or higher cognitive effort to manage linguistic control and interference. In this picture, can show about the different aspect to the brain. In this case, bilingual demonstrate a notable overexertions or heightened activation intensity in 5 key left frontal and temporal brains areas. This graphic explain that. The structural neuroplasticity or the structural change. In this chart, we can observe different situations about the regions of brain and the function associated to cognitive. For example, in the first line, we have the left inferior parietal lobe is associated to a second language vocabulary acquisition and lexical storage. Each part of the brain is associated to the cognitive functions, to the phonology, articulation, complex speech motor control, with auditory processing or linguistic pathway. Analyzing biological causality, we have 3 points. Environmental, talk about the natural bilingual environment bypass the kitchen or egg, the chicken or egg causality debate, showing clear anatomical increases in auditory processing zones. Longitudinal studies tracking English speaker learning German found that the structural density increase in the left inferior frontal hears directly correlated with how much individual languages proficiency improved over 5 months. And age of acquisitions, individuals who learn second languages after childhood display more gray matter in left frontal gyrus and less in the right hemisphere compared to the monolinguals. A structural difference not seen in those who are bilingual from birth. And this is my presentation about egocentrism and the perspective of the others. Thank you, Miss. Thank you for your attention.